Imagine the sun sets at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You've been awake for 3 hours, and you're already thinking about how to survive the next 14. Your hands are cracked from cold. Your feet never fully dry out. And somewhere out there, in the dark, temperatures are dropping toward levels that can kill an unprepared human being in under an hour. This isn't a blizzard scene from a movie. This is Tuesday, every single day for months. Because somewhere between 45,000 and 40,000 years ago, a group of Homo sapiens did something that should have been impossible. They walked out of Africa, out of warm savannas and river valleys, and pushed north into an ice age Europe locked in the coldest stretch of climate our species had ever tried to live through. Today, when winter comes, you turn up the thermostat, throw on a coat, and complain about scraping your windshield. For you, winter is an inconvenience. For the first modern humans to face a true ice age winter, it was closer to a test with no second attempt. Get it wrong, and there's no ambulance, no hospital, no rescue. Just cold, dark, and time. So let's talk about what it actually took to survive that first winter, because the answer is more incredible than most people realize. The first problem was the cold itself, and it was worse than anything modern humans deal with. During the peak of the last ice age, average temperatures in parts of Ice Age Europe sat 10 to 15 degrees Celsius below today's averages. That doesn't sound like much until you realize it turned entire regions of France and Central Europe into something closer to modern-day Siberia. Nights could drop to -20, -30 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind chill made it worse. And these early humans didn't have permanent structures, insulated walls, or central heating. They had animal hides, fire, and each other. Archaeologists have found something remarkable at sites across Ice Age Europe, evidence of tailored clothing. Not draped furs thrown over the shoulder, but fitted garments sewn with bone needles, some with eyed tips barely a few millimeters wide. At sites in Russia and Ukraine, researchers have recovered thousands of ivory beads that once lined the sleeves and legs of clothing, arranged in patterns that suggest the garments were shaped to the body, tapered at the wrists and ankles to trap warmth. This wasn't decoration first. It was engineering. A poorly fitted garment in -20-degree weather doesn't just feel uncomfortable. It kills you within hours. And then there's the shelter problem. In parts of Ukraine and Russia, at sites like Mazirik, archaeologists uncovered something that still surprises people today. Houses built almost entirely out of mammoth bones. Skulls stacked as foundation walls. Long bones and tusks arranged as structural supports. Some of these dwellings used the remains of more than 60 mammoths in a single structure. This wasn't a random pile of bones. It was architecture built by people who had no trees to cut down on a wind-scoured, treeless steppe, and who solved that problem using the largest resource available to them, the skeletons of animals that had already died. Think about what that actually required. Someone had to plan the structure. Someone had to know which bones bore weight and which didn't. Someone had to organize a group to haul mammoth skulls, some weighing over 100 pounds, into a specific formation, then cover the whole thing with hides to block the wind. That's not survival by accident. That's survival by design. But shelter alone doesn't keep you alive. You still need fuel, and on a treeless Ice Age steppe, wood was often scarce or non-existent. So people burned what they had: dried animal dung, bone grease, and yes, bone itself. Bone actually burns, slowly and hot. Once it gets going, and evidence of bone-fueled hearths has turned up inside several of these mammoth bone dwellings. Someone had to keep that fire alive through the entire winter, feeding it constantly, because in a landscape this cold, a fire going out wasn't a minor problem. It was the difference between a family waking up in the morning and a family that didn't. Food was the next crisis, and it never stopped being one. Summer abundance had to somehow carry a group through 6 or 7 months of frozen ground where almost nothing grew. So people stored what they could. Pits dug into permafrost worked as natural freezers, preserving meat for months at a time. Some sites show evidence of large-scale hunting drives in autumn, killing far more animals than needed for immediate meals, specifically to build up a reserve before the deep cold set in. This is calculated planning. It means someone was thinking months ahead, doing the mental math of how many mouths needed feeding and for how long. And when stored food ran low midwinter, groups had to hunt in brutal conditions, tracking animals like reindeer and horse across snow-covered ground where a single injury could be a death sentence. No modern winter boots. No waterproof layers. Just hide wraps, animal fat grease on exposed skin, and raw endurance. Now here's where it gets interesting, because surviving the cold wasn't only a physical problem. It was a social one. No single person could gather enough fuel, maintain a fire around the clock, hunt, process hides, sew clothing, and repair shelter walls damaged by wind, all alone, for months. Winter survival required a group working in constant coordination, which meant winter might have been one of the most socially demanding periods of the entire year. Evidence from sites across this period shows signs of larger seasonal gatherings, multiple family groups clustering together for the coldest months. Being isolated in a small group during an Ice Age winter was dangerous. If your fire died, if someone got injured, if food ran out, there was no backup. But in a larger group, tasks could be split, skills could be shared, and if one family's stores ran low, others could help carry them through. Winter likely forced early humans to build the exact kind of wide social networks and cooperation that Homo sapiens are now known for, and that other human species, like Neanderthals, generally didn't rely on to the same extent. And this might be one of the biggest reasons Homo sapiens made it through Ice Age winters that other species struggled against. It wasn't necessarily stronger bodies. Neanderthals were, if anything, better built for cold, with stockier frames and larger noses to warm incoming air. What Homo sapiens seemed to have was better logistics. Clothing engineered for the body. Shelters built from available materials with real structural planning. Food storage systems that thought months ahead. And social networks wide enough to pull a group through a crisis a single family couldn't survive alone. There's also evidence that this wasn't purely functional. Alongside practical tools, archaeologists have found personal ornaments at these same winter sites, carved beads, pierced animal teeth, small engraved objects with no survival purpose at all. Which means even in the middle of the hardest season of the year, in a shelter built from mammoth bones with a fire that couldn't be allowed to die, people were still making things purely to look at, to wear, to mean something. Survival and meaning weren't separate activities. They were happening in the same freezing room, by the same fire, at the same time. So picture that first real winter again. Weeks of darkness expanding. Temperatures that could kill you in an exposed hour. A landscape with no wood, no shelter already standing, no guarantee that the food stored in autumn would actually last until spring. And somehow people did it. They built houses from the bones of dead giants. They sewed clothing precise enough to trap body heat at -20 degrees. They planned food reserves for a season they hadn't survived yet. They pulled together into groups large enough that no single failure could end everything. And when spring finally came, when the ground thawed and the light came back and the mammoth bone houses could finally be abandoned for open ground again, the people who walked out of those shelters weren't just survivors. They were proof that a species could plan its way through a season designed to kill it. Every winter coat you own, every heated room, every stored bag of food in your pantry, all of it traces back to people who figured out how to outplan a season that had never met anything like them before.